Afternoon, everybody at the Gold Investment Letter. This is the free e-letter update. I'm going to shoot a video. I'm going to talk about and show you charts, a number of different stocks that I haven't updated in a while, several of which have been dogs with fleas, and I'm aware of it, and I'm going to address it. And then, we're also going to talk about some of the positive things that I see and that have occurred for us. We're in the, I think, listen, this space has been in excess of 3.5 years of a bear cycle. We hit tops in August of 2020. Since then, it's been a grinding, grueling bear cycle. Just like they've always said, a rising tide lifts all boats, which means that once we do get any capital flows, God forbid, in this sector and have tailwinds instead of headwinds, even some of your dog shit little juniors that, have barely a pulse are going to start to move. We've not seen that yet. We have seen some movement. We've seen some movement in some of the stronger names, the producers. But I'm going to give you some thoughts that I have about why I believe that the time of the turn is approaching. And I was wrong on what I had suspected was going to be the case going into January, where we had a trifecta situation in Q4 with how low and bombed out the juniors were. Meaning, for example, tax loss selling season, but only relevant when you have tax selling season with other assets that you're taking tax losses against, meaning capital gains. Everything else went up last year. Everything, crypto, S&P, you name it. A lot of real estate profits. I mean, all kinds of different things. And so when you have any particular sector that is down a lot and you have big gains that you're going to book, that sector is an absolute candidate to be dumped off without price discovery concern. Meaning, like, I got to get out of this piece of crap. I am down. I've got to offset my gains. I don't care where I sell it. We saw some of that starting probably a little bit early in the year or in this tax selling season back in October and November. Things stabilized, but when you add on top of the fact that we've had already suppressed prices for 3.5 years, we had, and this is a situation where a lot of you guys that are new, we have a lot of new members, so welcome. What you're going to find going forward for those of you that are new, anything that comes out here at the Gold Investment Letter that is proprietary content that comes to the free e-letter, I'm saying this humbly, but I'm ready to absolutely crush it going forward for you. By picking unique opportunities in this space. My loyalty, the very loyalty of much more regular communication, much more ideas, sharing the wealth in terms of even private placements that I could do, much more myself, but because of our elite members, of which I keep at 25 people, all accredited individuals or institutions, a lot of those folks are there for deal flow and for getting ideas that I know that I'm going to go in big first. Then naturally the premium members. So if some of you going forward here, we start to see any sort of a turn in the market that validates, that it's potentially game on in a bull cycle, you may want to consider. And you may want to consider it now if you really want to do it. If you think that I've got anything worthy to add to the table and to the equation, the premium is a very reasonable cost. I think it's under $1,500 a year. You can go to goldinvestmentletter.com and check that out. On the elite side, it's more expensive. It's, I think, $8,000 or $9,000 a year. But we also do interviews. I want to make sure it's a fit, it's the right people. We've got 2 slots open there. Those will end up getting filled. Last time we had a bull cycle, we had a long waiting list for elite. If you were on the waiting list and then it fell off, on your radar because we've had such a bad market the last few years, you may want to, contact Erica and set up a call, and or at least get on the premium list, because there's just so much more activity there. I do want to, however, first of all, remain accountable with what I have shared here this last year, particularly a few of the ideas that have not gone up, they've gone down, for those of you, and tell you where they stand and what my situation is, what my perspective is on it. But I will tell you this. I don't know of anybody, and I'm gonna say that this is unequivocal in terms of just saying this humbly. There's nobody in this entire industry that, when we get the opportunity early in a bull cycle to compound our returns, and somebody who talks about not just buy this stock or sell that stock. I get into a lot of things with regard to risk management, portfolio management, position sizing, how and when to take profits, where to roll profits in early in the cycle to keep it within the ecosystem. A lot of folks are out of cash, so it's really extra painful. Your rule number one in a market like this is just make sure that you are not forced to pay, your bills or your rent. It's easier said than done. I've been there. Do not give up any stock in quality, junior miners, in gold, silver, critical metals, whatever it is. Just do not give up the ghost yet. Hang on with everything you can. Find funds to pay your bills elsewhere. Anybody who's been selling in the last, 6 months or so, is going to have massive levels of regret. There's just no doubt about it. I have never seen, particularly in the low end of the junior miners, such low value, undervalued plays in my career. The only thing that comes close is in summer and fall of 2015, after we had hit all-time highs in 11 and then grinded down for over 4 years. And that was when, like, I still distinctly remember that summer in 15, finding things like Giga Resources, which has and had at that time, they had like a $5 million cash royalty that was due coming into them, $1 million a year. So that they're going to be solvent. They had gold and nickel, very interesting, earlier stage, but interesting. And there was a big resource of nickel, by the way, on one of their assets in Sweden, which as a jurisdiction, I really like it in Sweden and Finland, even though most likely, for me, a lot of the plays that we focused on, you don't have to take much jurisdictional risk. Those would be included in the safer ones, along with Nevada and the US and, Canada, but it depends on the domicile within Canada, I think, as they become more of a socialist entity, unfortunately. But that's the world that we live in, meaning that we can go into the best of breed geographic locations and still find companies that have been sold off to levels that are absolutely, utterly ridiculous. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of that. But in any event, with compounding and managing and shucking and jiving a little bit, for those of you that do have some limited amount of cash to deploy, we all do at some point. What's helped me quite a bit, I've preached and, tried to prophesy, if you will, and evangelize a lot of my fellow gold investors to get some exposure to Bitcoin starting back in 2016 when it was under $500 a Bitcoin. Am I saying that to brag? No. Am I saying it for you to be like, screw off, I wasn't around then, or I didn't do anything? I would just say that one of the constants that I've had with gold investors that I've told you guys, and this isn't going to change, anybody who, if it's you that manages your own money, or if it's a fund manager or an advisor or a newsletter writer, and they haven't been keeping Bitcoin in the equation as it pertains to the potential move, the conditions of the gold market, they're completely out of touch. Because you have your first, what I would call, even though I believe they're very complementary, and I've done videos on this I'm going to share some of the newer interviews on Real Vision that I've done recently. So hold on to your hats in respect to a couple of them that have had the highest level of views and engagement and likes and things on the Real Vision platform. I'm going to start getting some of those out to you guys in case you've missed them. And then I have just recently, they published in one 1 hour slot, I interviewed Rick Rule, and just for what it's worth, the Real Vision higher ups actually asked if it was okay that instead of just publishing it directly on YouTube, they could keep it behind their paid firewall for 2 weeks as a benefit to their paying members because they thought it was so good, and it is. It's very good. One of the angles that I get into with, and then we did Rob McEwen. Rob was a two-part series because it was so amazing that like when we had about 20, 30 minutes to go, I said, Rob, can you handle another 20 minutes? Because I got a feeling we got to break this into two parts and it's just filled with juice. Which, these guys have done the circuit. Most of us have seen these type of folks. Rob, from the operator side, but he's also a very successful investor in mining, very wealthy, and has an incredible story, but not without a lot of challenges along the way. Rick, I dig into his past when, after that first run in the 70s into the early 80s, making all this money, he was on the verge of bankruptcy. And I dig into their stories so that some of us, we can relate, and we don't just think, oh, they've already made it, they've got it easy. No, we still have to fight. We still have to have, we have to endure times like we're going through right now to come out of the other side. And let me just tell you this, without saying that telling you that I was wrong in January, because what I had anticipated is that with the selling that we were seeing with tax selling exacerbated on the fact that the whole industry had been bombed out for a year anyway, that we would see some of these juniors float up and then any buy in January where people were rotating. Some folks will end up selling, they'll give it 30 days into the new year and buy their position back. And because the selling has been completely subsided, which is still the case in a lot of these companies I'm going to talk about, we didn't see that, and they've continued to drag. And so delayed effect, I said it would happen by, January, early February. We're now going into April, and we have not seen that on a broad scale. So I'm just acknowledging that I was off on that. Now, do I regret any of the companies that I bought on sale in October, November, on top of my core positions? This was more for like, hey, let's do a swing trade on extra stock that we can flip, for 30 to 50% within 90 days. I've made a career out of that and not just in miners, but in tech and in other areas, whatever those things where the lineup is, where you have an underperforming sector, but a lot of people have made money in other areas where it's a candidate to get extra sold off. But we've got a recipe with tons of different shit that makes it obvious to me that the place to be right now is gold, silver, mining stocks. The lower you go down the rung, the cheaper they are. We've got some movement and some strength, certainly and I'll show you some charts in a second, like even McEwen Mining, because copper is getting a bid, and they've got the 9th largest undeveloped copper asset in the world that they've got right now. I don't even remember, like 20 drills rolling on. They're hitting that thing hard. But in any event, when I mentioned the Bitcoin, it was just because some of you know, I have another newsletter. It's phenomcrypto.com, Phenom crypto.com. And yes, correlation there between Phenom Resources, which I'm going to get to on an update, which is not my company, but I am now the largest shareholder, just above Rob McEwen. I own 8.5%, a little more than that, of the fully diluted shares and warrants of Phenom Resources, which my cost average is, I'm down on it. So you could, and I'm going to give you an update on that, and you guys are going to hopefully get some of the excitement rubbing off on me, even about things that I can't speak about. Look, whether any of you buy any of this shit, or sell it or whatever you do. I care about my people that come to me or listen to me. You give me the investment of your time and energy. And then, the next element is people that back capital based on, an idea from me, a recommendation. From my perspective, I not only respect that, but I feel accountable. And I've not done a great job of following up on some of the things that have gone south on us since I've been recommending certain deals in 2023 with you guys on the free letter. The premium and elite are different, and I would just encourage you all as we go forward, monitor what I'm giving you and see if you think it's worth it. But historically, since this letter has been launched in 2011, this is the longest dry spell I've had without a 10-bagger. We have had so many massive winners over the years in good and bad markets. I am way overdue for some big shit to happen, and I would love for you guys to be a part of it. Hopefully you will be, whether you're a paid subscriber or not. But anyway, so let me share my screen and let's talk about some of these trades that I want to get into that are, this is the most important chart that I'm going to show you. It's the chart of gold over 10 years, because I don't care. A lot of people are baffled. When are the gold miners going to go up? Gold's at all-time highs. Why aren't the miners getting a pulse? Listen, if gold continues to creep higher, which I think it's about to explode higher, and I'm telling you this not because I hope so. I'm telling you because if I looked at a chart like this, all right, on frickin' soybeans or on utility stock, doesn't matter. This is going a lot higher. Now, the caveat, and I've said this very consistently, is that I wanted to see a monthly close on good volume above 2,100 on the monthly to indicate that we are breaking out at all-time highs and it's secure, because this is a 10-year monthly chart. So the monthly close coming up on Sunday, I believe it reflects the Sunday market, so that by Monday, we're going to know where gold closed the month. Keep in mind, so when you look here, I just want to give you guys I talk about this on Real Vision because we're doing a series there to, show the evolution here from bear market into hopefully blasting bull market. Last time I'll mention crypto is because what's kept me in a very strong position, even though, sucking wind on a lot of these positions myself in the miners, I don't have 100% of my money in mining stocks or metals. But I am a lunatic, and I have a tremendous amount of the juniors and gold and metals and mining stocks. But I also am a lunatic in the sense that now well over half of my net worth is in crypto. A lot of that is from gains. And last year was a very good year. Early this year was a very good year. I've banked partial profits already from, you can see this and this is going to change on the Gold Investment Letter YouTube channel. I came out and was preaching hard late Q2 2022, and especially in the beginning of the year, January and February of last year, that the bottom was in Bitcoin and people needed, and I even used that for the Phenom crypto letter. We're now separating that, so you guys that don't want to hear about crypto, you can just watch the Gold Investment Letter, and you're not going to have anything get into that in a crossover, except for Bitcoin is relevant in the conversation of what is money, what is value transfer, and the central banking system, and gold, and as a store of value, or what is it? It's whether it's taking market share from gold investors, which it is a bit, but also, just these two assets as defense against fiat debasement is the key. So I may still have chats, and I do want to update you guys on what I think about Bitcoin, because a lot of you, going back even 5 years ago in the bear market of Bitcoin, I had begged and gave an analogy. And I would love to hear from you guys that actually did this, where I said, Bitcoin's about 5,000. I said, if you think that I know what I'm talking about at all, you have any respect for my viewpoint, think I have any talent or ability in this market. I said, Bitcoin's either going to zero or it's going to the millions. And I saw this pretty early in terms of, it's hard to keep up with all of it, but there's things are changing so fast in the crypto world. But just with Bitcoin, I said, if you have a child under the age of 13 or whatever, 12 or 10 years old, buy them one Bitcoin and don't fricking touch it. And I said that the downside is it was at 5 grand around that time, you lose 5 grand. You know it going in. If I'm wrong, 5 grand gone. Don't let it put you in the poorhouse. But I also said that if I'm half right, you're going to be able to pay for your college's entire your child's college education in cash upfront. And I'm not talking about a bachelor's degree at Johnny Poppins community college. I'm talking about a doctorate at Harvard. That's how high I thought Bitcoin was and is going to go, and it is. And I've been very, 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 very humbly saying spot on with that market. And we had a split. A lot of the gold investors don't want to hear about it. Whatever. Be a dinosaur. No problem. Be a dinosaur. I'll still do my best to make you money in the mining stocks. But for those that were open-minded and those that actually even joined like the crypto letter and things, I mean, the amount of money we've been making in the last 12 months is like what we would dream and hope of that's coming next in the junior miners. And I think it will. So that's the good news. But look at this gold chart, and I'm going to blaze through some of these updates. But you look at the gold chart, and if you actually look, let me really quickly say, so these are the closing highs that we had back in 21, late 21, early 22 is even lower on the monthly closes. And then in 23, we did have a close. I thought we had one or two at least above 2,000. I've said above 2,100 just to be like, conservative about it and make sure it really is a breakout, not a false breakout. But if you look in here, all this area, I believe it's been 4 monthly closes in a row at all-time highs on gold, but it didn't break 21. It broke 21 in early December, but it came back down and closed the month lower than that. We're 4 days away from the end of the month, and gold has busted out, and we're seeing it above 2,200. I think it's a very far stretch to see, even if you think that this market is manipulated and stuff by the big banks, that they're going to knock this down under 2,100 by Sunday. Gold, just like I talked about with Bitcoin, I'm only using the analogies to try to help you guys, see what, what I've said that has actually led to profitability. Having my feeling groovy tea shot. Anyway, the breakout, now this is 1, 2, 3, you can even call it 4 to 5, but I'm going to call it 4. This is the fourth. It's a quadruple top breakout of an all-time high in an asset that's been consolidating for over a decade. Any asset this is that does this, that I mentioned it on Bitcoin when in 2020, I believe it was, when it went through 20,000, which was the previous high in late 17, early 18. I had mentioned at that time, be ready, even if you're a skeptic of this stuff, because you're going to have a chance to scalp. Buying at 20,500, for example, this is going right to 27, 28,000. And I think I said something to the effect of, 3 to 9 months or something like that. And it happened within 2 weeks. Gold is not meant to compete with Bitcoin. It's a different ball game, but we're about to see gold boogie and play some catch up. And this breakout this month is the first clear trigger that people are going to know gold's going higher in US dollar terms. And my prediction, yes, it's a prediction, and it's based on what have I had now? 29 years of experience in this business, studying the markets, capital markets as an investor, trader, speculator, and advisor in my early career. And then, bottom line is I've made every mistake in the book, but I pay attention to technical analysis and fundamental analysis, and I like to put those together. And the last thing, with crypto, the point I had made is that I was able to take some profits by being exposed there with a good amount of my money. And I have been taking partial profits and moving it over into my brokerage accounts and beefing up positions in junior mining companies with assets in the ground, because it's the biggest area sector of value that I see in the world. Okay. And not just because I'm in it. I could close this newsletter down tomorrow, never talk to you ever again. I don't ever have to work again. It doesn't matter. And a lot of that was from big, huge, monstrous winners occasionally, right? Now, this doesn't happen every day. In mining stocks that we had from the 2012 to 20 timeline, especially with warrants. If you're like an elite and you got some of the warrants, Encore Energy, we were really early, but it was 5 cents, and that thing's at $4 now, and still own a piece. And those are the ones that can change your life. But the miners, and I thank God for the miners and this metals industry, because gave me a stake to start doing properly what I wanted to do in crypto. When the bubble popped in late 17 and it went below 8,000 in 18, and I was expecting a 2-year bear market, and I automatically started to accumulate. And then in the flush of 2020, I had cash on the sidelines and I went in there deep, and the rest is history. I had the biggest winners of my entire life in crypto. There was nothing like it, except for what might be like it in the ballpark is going to be junior mining stocks. That's why we're here. But it has been very frustrating and demoralizing for people. But the more demoralizing, the more people have thrown in the towel, the more bullish it is, guys. This is still a cyclical sector. We're going to make a flipping fortune. We just have to be a little bit more patient. When is the trigger? If you have gold juniors with ounces in the ground and good stories, they're still solvent. How high does gold have to go to where, like, unequivocally this thing is going to start to pulling up, the mining stocks? Well, first of all, we are seeing better strength in the producers, and that's usually how it works. But imagine a producer of gold that has geared back their costs so tight to operate in an environment where you're like $1,700 to $1,900 gold. That's what they've done, and that's what they have to prepare for. And they've got their costs completely tightened up during this 3-4 year duration. Every $100 on the gold price is going to fall straight to the bottom line of profits for the producers. This is going to make gold producers, starting even now at 2,200, their numbers, like, look at McEwen Mining. They lost a shitload of money not last year, the year before, but in 2023, net income, I believe it was over $1 a share. And this hasn't even started yet. So 23, 24, 2,500 gold miners, producers are going to be printing cash. So what does that mean? That means that, and my minimum prediction based just on technicals, we close above, these previous highs on Sunday. You're going to hear me talking a lot more. You're going to hear me a lot more active, because it's going to be game on. To quit hitting the snooze button, guys. That's what I was going to title this one. Maybe I will. And you got to get active, and you got to wake up, and you have to basically take all of this pain and capital destruction and just leave it at the door. I don't care if you go see a yogi. I don't care if you go to church. I don't care if you just, realize in your own head in a moment of quiet. Recency bias can be a killer. What has been the case in the recent past will continue to be the short-term future. That's recency bias. And I do not like getting caught up in it. It's easy to get lulled into it. But when the evidence shows itself, and I need to flip 100% from caution, or whatever, some people fear, to get aggressive. I get aggressive. I don't remember any of that time. It's like, you know, you end up suffering after a divorce for 5 years. All of a sudden, the woman of your dreams walks into your life, and you've been marinating on that trouble that you had in the last relationship, and then boom. So let's look at it that way, because that's how it's going to feel. And I hope it's going to be right now, basically. But my minimum target range for gold is, at a minimum, after this long of a consolidation and a breakout of the previous high, at a minimum, we're going to 2,600 gold. And at a maximum, before we have any sort of real, like from a cyclical bull market, so call it within the next 18 months. But I think that it'll take 3 to 6 months on a very decisive breakout like this, especially if we have one more big candle like the following month. 26, 27, 2,800 is going to happen within 6 months, certainly by the end of the year. It's going to happen pretty fast. For gold, that's a big move. Where is it going to start to kick in, where people no longer can deny and start to rush into gold mining stocks, even the juniors? My guess is around 24, 2,500. It's always where it's been in my mind. It starts to get there, and people are finally convinced, after being beaten down, that gold is in a new bull phase, or at least is going into new highs, and it's not going to fall right back down like it's always done. We're going to be game on. And that's what we're going to see. 2,400, 2,300. I don't even need to see that. There's so much value out there right now. I continue to plant seeds. You have to pace yourself if you only have so much capital to do and to allocate. But if you do have money and you do have income, guys, if you're thinking about selling your stuff right now and not, or I just have still got my stock, I still hold what I had in 2011, it's down 90%, but I'm still hoping. I'm sorry, I like to get blunt on this letter. You're a fucking idiot. You need to be buying the shit. You are the one who learned about the values of gold as money, mining stocks as a sector. It's a tiny, unique sector that, if anything, it doesn't have the huge risk from here of like going away or getting much smaller, but it does have the risk of you not having things on the books and buying new positions and freshening up your portfolio, and then going absolutely berserk because we have so many supply demand apexes where everything is going to be in a deficit of what is needed over the next 5 years. And this shit could turn into crypto FOMO type of stuff. But the loser mentality of, I'm still in it, you know, I still have, like, I hear this with crypto people, I still have my Dogecoin, and Bitcoin is at, you know, like 18,000. I'm literally like taking, I had a soft, like a duster, and my friend, and I started to smack him with it. I'm like, wake the hell up, dude. Get money going into the sector. That's where I feel like we're very close. Now, last thing I'll say on this, and I'm going to move on very quickly. Very close, but we do want to see some flows from the outside, not just some lunatic like Eric Mashinsky, gold investor, and it's about to go. I need to see some outside validation before I really push even more capital in, because I'm very deep in this space and I've been buying all along. Let's look at, for example, Giga. I want to show you a few examples that I know that a lot of you are following or have learned about as my top positions that I've shared over the years. Giga being a class 1 nickel play with a very big asset. And this is the daily chart, but look at the weekly. So for over 2 years, when I was started to move money from crypto big profits in late 21, I was chipping away and buying things. I remember it, buying things like Giga. And I think it was in the low 40s here, actually, like that spring when crypto popped, and then this summer. So started buying then, obviously too early, but it bought all the way down. I have bought more Giga Metals the last 4 to 5 weeks at least once or 2 days per week. I'm at it. I own about, I don't know what it is because it goes over with some of these companies and I have to re-add it up. But I own at least 1.5% of the company personally. And it's such a no-brainer that if you just have some patience, guys, and you can buy Giga Metals, is it going to go lower first? I don't give a shit. It's going to $1.50, $2 by the end of the story because it's worth it. And you're going to see, I was also wrong, by the way, on nickel. Nickel went lower than I was anticipating, and it hit what did we go down in the low 6 handle? It's back to almost 8, and that's a reasonable price for nickel. If you look at nickel operators over the past couple of decades, they had to build their businesses at $4 or $5 nickel. I really don't believe it's going there. There's a lot of signs because of the Indonesian dirty production increase that flooded the market and other factors. A lot of these things are starting to end. And so I see the nickel price going forward, just like I do with copper, improving, like in Q2, starting to improve, or at least bottom out, and then we go from there. Am I predicting nickel is going to $30 this year? No, doesn't need to. We go back to $10 and Giga Metals, just on their turning it asset, has close to $500 million net present value on their turning it asset, which is at PFS stage. And every dollar thereof after, like when it was trading at $12 nickel, you add I think it's 150 million on the NPV. And this thing is trading at what? What's this thing trading at? Let me actually give you US numbers because that's what I'm speaking in. Yeah. $11 million with an asset right now at $8. I don't know what the NPV is, but it's over $300 million in a normal market, guys, with buyouts in most of the minerals and metals and miners. In a normal tepid market, you're going to get 1x net present value. In a hot market, you get multiples on your NPV. In a shit market, you get a discount to your NPV. But this is like, what is this? This is like 85, 90% discount to NAV. Giga Metals might be one of the stupidest opportunities I've ever seen in my career in terms of I am not worried about it at all. And maybe there's some of my position, my cost average on this, by the way, is a lot higher. I'm underwater, at least 30% on paper, maybe more. Let's move on so we're talking about Giga. I like silver. But gold, is the king. It's the first one to go. It's the strongest. There are plenty of gold miners out there that I think we focus on first, but silver, we know, mimics it in a bigger or smaller way in a bull or bear market. First Majestic has been destroyed in the last couple of years. I believe they are still an extremely well-run company. You look at the 2-year, it's like, why would I buy some of this here? Okay, fair enough, whatever. Take your time, take your sweet time. But I started adding, and I started adding in size around $5. And I'm willing to hold it for as long as it takes, because what we have seen with stocks like this, the producers, which is moving more towards gold production as a mix anyway, by the way, 23 to $25 on the top of the channel, no problem. So call it a quadruple. I'm looking for a triple to quadruple in First Majestic as a lower risk type of a bounce. Now, when you get into something like, and I'll do this in another update because it's going to get long, Golden Tag, which turned into Silver Storm. I love that play here. They are doing a small raise, so I'd probably take a little bit of your time, but at like 11 cents Canadian, I continue to buy that one. I'm just letting you guys know I'm underwater on that as well. I want to talk about the Lithium Americas trade because a lot of you had done that with me and then asked, and then I got a lot of hate mail about, being wrong. But if you followed my third, a third, a third. Guess what? Guess what? The worst case scenario of how a deal will trade and not work with a third, a third, a third concept that I gave for you guys, I'm now in the green. And you should be too, if you actually followed along with the three tranches. I waited on that third tranche. Here, let me give you a screenshot. Let me give you a screenshot of, is this it? Yeah, I think this is it right here. Okay, this is my Fidelity account right now today. It doesn't include the $10 calls that I think are that I bought initially. So there's the equity itself, and then there's the calls, and the calls were down. So I'm still down 60%. This is from when I first recommended LAC $10 calls in May 2024. On the last tranche that I bought, which I moved down to 7.5, same expiry, I'm up 600% to wash out this, make up for a bunch of this big decline, as well as in other accounts, I own LAC itself, and I own another slug of options from the second tranche that I'm slightly up on. So we're looking at, like I said on this one, even if everything goes against us, we're going to get a wash or a small profit. So where is LAC now? We've had a bounce from 4 to almost 7. I was early on this. I was wrong, and I had to adjust. I think this is where I ended up on the extreme. This is where I recommended it. And then so, going from 7 down to 4 is not nice, but we bought another tranche here, another tranche here. I think somewhere in this area. So your cost average is somewhere in here, right? I'm just giving you generals, but this is accurate. So now you're up. You should be up on this LAC trade. And anybody who got into that thing where you bought your first tranche at the second tranche because you're newer, you're sitting on a big profit. And, lithium is not my favorite area in the metals and minerals markets, but it's been lambasted and it's coming back. And we should at least see Lithium Americas go back to this 9 to 11 area, or we're going to do a reverse head and shoulders on the 2-year and start to range and then move up. But I am going to be happy to take, maybe 20, 30% profits on that position, even though it was stressful. That'll be like a 6-month, 9-month hold for, 25, 30%. It's not the end of the world, guys, even though a lot of those thirds that I give to premium and elite members, when the circumstances line up, we make 1, 2, 3x in weeks sometimes. And then a lot of times the goal on that strategy for me is a 30 to 50% gain within, call it 2 weeks to 2 months. That's typically how it works. We had to adjust on this one. We did. If you followed along, you're in the money. Okay. If you didn't, and then you said Mashinsky's a dick around here and you sold it, you're a sucker. See you later. Bye-bye. Just kidding. But I do know what I'm doing in these markets, guys. And we've had a rough one. And a lot of us have gotten our butt kicked in the miners. My goal today, and part of the reason why I just wanted to share also all the money being made in other areas for me in the investment game, I think is positive for you, just from the sense that I'm not seeing this stuff in the miners with like foggy, dark lenses. Like I'm beaten down on the ground and I just am having a tough time even getting off the ground. I see clearly, man. I see clearly, and I'm not afraid to, and I'm waiting for me, because I have a lot of my net worth in these things. But all along, we've been leading private placements since last summer, and I'm going to talk about one of them that went south on us that you guys know, and then I'm just going to briefly talk about, and I'll show you the McEwen. Look how strong this has been in the last couple of weeks since they reported their earnings right around PDAC. Huge earnings turnaround. Earnings still drive stocks. Earnings drive stocks and the producers. The producers get flush with cash. they start to look downward, they buy the developers and the explorers, and the premiums on those stocks start to go higher. That's why 24, 2,500, I think, starts to get them flush enough. M&A activity will pick up, and then our juniors, if they haven't already moved, are going to start rising from the dead. That is what is going to occur. Gold is the most important metal on the planet, and I still believe there's a correlation that gold moves first, and then you have silver, obviously, but then also the palladium, the platinum, and even nickel, copper. The environment, especially in this mining stocks, gets rubbed off from the direction of gold. They are connected, even though it's an economic metal versus a monetary metal for the most part. We really want gold to start to move in fiat. And McEwen is a great example of turning those operations around after a lot of suffering. And I went through this interview with Rob, and it's a fascinating story. And I'm going to share that with you guys, maybe in a separate email, so most of you pay attention to this one for now and get my update. I do want to talk about really quickly one of the duds for you guys, and really actually now for everybody, because we funded the elite members. We went in, it was part of the strategy of buying ounces in the ground very cheaply. And I believe Carlile in June, July of last summer was trading around $2 an ounce USD for their Newton project, which has a 1,000,000 ounce resource, inferred resource, but it's a resource. And you could see here, this is where we did an 8.5 cent placement. And then I was getting excited about it. I was in Vancouver. People were starting to talk about it. And I brought this out to premium members right here, so they have a bit of a lower cost average, hopefully. But then, you know, I talked about this with everybody because I thought we were going to see one stop at like 40 cents, which would have meant that if you bought it up to the high teens, you could take half off and your risk off of the deal. Now, the Newton asset hasn't gone anywhere, guys. There's still 1,000,000 ounces there. But in short, management and the situation and how things played out, without getting into detail, after this period of time where I was very bullish about it, my trust was broken. And I don't blindly keep telling you guys or myself to buy something if something like that happens. And in many cases, it can be, you know, like you guys know some of my rules: over dilution, no insider ownership, continuing to do that, diluting the company, messing up our returns. This one happened is to still have a good share structure, but we'll see what they do. There were fundamental trusts that were broken. So where do I stand? I have not sold any of my stock that was 1,000,000 shares and warrants at 8.5. I took off a little bit of I had an extra like trading position, swing position that I got out of like break even or something around there, plus or minus 10%. I actually bought some more back here despite the issues that I have, but I haven't been telling you guys to load up in it because of the, you know, the trust factor has been damaged. So you don't need to know all the details, but it's not because I did a pump and dump, guys, and I'm going to dump it on you. I'm trying to make us all money. Now, the elites and the premiums get an edge because they get in first, but there have been times when we have, you know, weeks or months with that group and myself to buy a position, and then I actually recommended it here, and it's cheaper than we got it. It happens. It's not the regular, but it does occur. So my inclination here is this is way too cheap with the Newton asset to sell. Carlile, you know, if your average on this is you were starting to buy it 16, 17, 18 Canadian, you can average down a bit. I just wouldn't make it a massive position, but I would potentially average down up to 6 cents Canadian. And then it's sort of like the lithium Americas. If you choose, you're going to get a bounce, especially in any sort of gold bull. Carlile could still work out pretty well. But, you know, my personal way of gauging certain things and then putting my neck on the line, That's probably incorrectable. And I'm rooting for everybody. I don't, and we have a lot of stock, so I hope they do well. But it's not something I'm going to be pushing hard on to get in. If I were to push hard on something that was cheap right now, it would be not Carlile just because of that fact. But if from a valuation standpoint, it's a buy. At a minimum, it's a hold. Don't touch your stock. But if you bought some here and then say you take your cost average in half by buying the same amount here with lesser money, and say your cost is around a dime, you will have the opportunity to cut your bait at a break even or small profit or tiny loss this year, maybe even within a month. It depends on what happens with the gold stocks. That's what I would say to you about Carlile. With my long-term stuff, I don't know. I just am going to probably take profits on that sooner than I normally would have if everything would have lined up well, where we thought sky was the limit on this one. Last thing I'm going to talk about, this is a long video, but trust me when I tell you, if you guys think that Phenom Resources, which is my biggest position that I've ever had in any investment, in any mining stock, in anything by far, if you think that the silence from me about this at times means something is not going on, I just want to let you know a couple things. One is I just put more money in again. We did a small placement, kept it small, about $1 million, just because the stock was down at, the lowest price it had been in years. Just for a backup history lesson here for myself, reminding myself that when we initially got involved, it was called First Vanadium. In November of 17, GIL led a little less than $1 million placement at 14 cents Canadian with a 24-cent long-term warrant. The stock went to $2 within 7 months. So we were free trading and you had this cheap warrant. So on paper, if you went from low to high, 23x if you had the warrant within 7-8 months. Pretty crazy. Many of us did take some profits along the way, and then it actually pulled back to like $1 in the summer of 18. So it shook a lot of people out and then went back to $2 because of some of the things that were going on with the Chinese, sort of hiccuping any supply because of some laws that were coming in. Vanadium itself went from under $10 during that time to over $30 a pound. But after that, it was a high, and it was a long bear cycle going into like the COVID puke in 2020. And I was looking around at that time about what should I boost my positions in, some of these familiar companies and assets that are now destroyed again. What do we do? Paul Carlile moved forward. He had funding after that good market, did a PEA. I stepped back in and started buying stock in the mid-teens in June or May of 2020. We led another financing and it was at 16 cents with a 26-cent warrant. By the way, I have exercised last summer. I think it was like 600,000 or 700,000 warrants at that 24-cent warrant because it must have been coming up on the 5 years. And we had a lot of people that funded it that way, which is why you never saw a new private placement last summer. It was basically like a year, I think, or more in between any sort of private placements. Very careful about the share structure with Phenom, treating it as precious so that, there's no big capital raises done. You pay the bills, you do what you got to do at the lower prices. But I put another check in, Rob McEwen came in. We had nothing but very strong investors. It was not offered out broadly. It was $1 million with big dogs and people that typically own at least 1 million shares. We've got a lot of the stock locked up for good reason. Here's what I'm going to say on Phenom right now, and I actually should give you guys a little bit more color in a follow-up video on this, on Silver Storm and Max Power is another one I wanted to get into today. I'm going to do a separate video on those. How about that? But I did want to touch on Phenom because we bottomed out. So the third placement we led was just whatever, 2 months ago at 17 cents. So we did a 14 cent that went to $2 on an option to buy the Carlin vanadium asset. Just an option. There were millions of dollars that needed to be paid and work commitments, and which has been done since then. But the thing went to $2 twice. Comes all the way back down. We lead a financing at 16 cents. Stock goes to 80 some cents fairly shortly thereafter. We just finished a 17-cent round. Where's it going to go this time? Here's what I'm going to tell you guys. There's more than meets the eye here. I'm going to have to be careful. What I can tell you is what they've talked about publicly. We've got a $200 million grant, a $300 million grant application in DC with the Department of Energy. I think there's also a smaller one with the Department of Defense. My office has been helping to get one of the highest lobbying firms you can possibly get on the books to engage with Phenom to make sure that when the DoD, DOE end up allotting money, free money, there are some strings, you've got to do more work and audits and stuff like that. But if it's $100 to $300 million, I mean, it just changes everything. And I've not counted on this in terms of my investment thesis, but Paul has done a great job of doing all of those long applications, getting, the last press release, they said, we're impressed with your concept paper, which was for 300 million, and finish it off. And so there's a lot of things there that we're taking, and they're taking very professionally, because mostly all the money you've seen from like the infrastructure bill and all that went towards, they're just playing catch up with lithium. Vanadium is even more important in terms of the next generation technologies, and the fact that we don't produce any in China and Russia produce over 72% of global vanadium, and they use it all. They don't sell it. We have a real issue in vanadium. The price is at all-time lows, down by like $5 a pound. But so my thought was always, okay, God, what could make this a Phenom story and work out for all of us, not just for my own money, but because we have so many dedicated, and a lot of people have gone heavier into Phenom because of how, convicted I am and how deep I've gone. And I really appreciate that. And I just am letting you know, I'm taking that seriously. And so the other thing is that behind the scenes, even when I don't talk to Paul Carlile for a bit, this guy he works his ass off. I'm very impressed. I ended up saying, yeah, use my brand Phenom for the new name if you like it, because I was always planning on doing a Phenom Resources deal myself. But in this case, we have a trustworthy CEO. Is he a phenomenon, from an operator standpoint? He might be, because of some of the stuff that's crackling in the background, but he's definitely a working hard, trustworthy CEO, not one of these guys that you're just like, I can't believe how stupid or lazy or whatever these other junior mining and drama and stuff. It's not happening at Phenom, which is a good sign. Dave Matheson is our bet. And the moves that have been happening to build out the gold side of the business, I'm pumped about. You're going to see permits that are going to be applied for at Dobbin and Crescent Valley, drilling that's going to be teed up. It's probably going to take until early summer to get that going, but other work. So it might be, I don't know if they're going to do IP work at Crescent Valley first and then just target drill holes at Dobbin. I did a video on this, guys, and you hear the background of this. 1% to 3% gold soil anomalies on surface in Nevada. And Dave was working with Newmont when they found this. 30 years goes by, whatever it is, and they find out that the wildlife preserve that was going to be built next to it by the USGS never happened. So it was restaked. This is one of the most attractive looking exploration projects that could be massive in Nevada. I'm convinced of it. We also have Crescent Valley. We've got Carlin Deep, which we're not going to be drilling anytime really soon in this environment in the market. We have a ton more vanadium, but we're already the largest, highest grade PEA stage at surface vanadium asset in North America. If the powers that be decide that they want a vanadium mine again in the US, that money's coming to us, is my guess. That could change everything. regardless, any pulse in the vanadium price, we can easily grow the resource and bring the costs way down from the PEA. I've walked through this all with Paul. I mean, it could look just so attractive, even with vanadium, but we would want vanadium back at least $10 a pound to get the market to get excited about it. But on the gold side, we have a number of different situations that I think we're going to get a discovery. It's going to be big. This is what I'm betting on with Dave Mattson, who's now on the board. He was reluctant before. He was an advisor. Now he's in. I think Paul has been working on acquiring, and I was encouraging him to do so in this bad market. One or two more gold projects. We've got one in Arizona. It's copper, Greenfield. We've got Dobbin, Crescent, Carlin Deep, which we think could be the monster of monsters, but it's also very expensive to drill. Pivoting over to Dobbin and Crescent Valley. And there's something going on in the background, guys. Let me see what I can say here. That would force the hand of the market. We've long been talking about the fact that these companies need to be spun out. Phenom Gold, Phenom Gold Copper, Phenom Vanadium. And the catalyst on this thing that could shock the world, I think there's an 85% chance it's going to happen. Can't talk about details. I don't even know if you can read much into some of the things that have been put out to know what could be coming for this company. But I give Paul Carlile all the credit in the world. And there's not much I can say, but what I will say, guys, the last stock you have to worry about in your portfolio is Phenom Resources. I would tell my niece to put her whole savings in fucking Phenom Resources at these prices. My mother. I'm not going to, because they don't even know what a stock is. But I own 10.6, is it? 10.6 million shares and warrants in Phenom. Fully diluted, turns into like over 8.5% of the company. My biggest position ever. It's my one deal. It's my one baby that you guys know of. And I do my best on the background. They run the company. They make the final decisions. When it comes to money, making sure that this is a company that does the right thing in terms of raising less at lower prices. If they need a lot, when the time's appropriate, I will help. I've invested a tremendous amount of capital. I've brought some big investors to the table. Paul, I think, we've got a great working relationship. He knows how much we've been there and supportive. Now is not the time to give up on this thing. If what I've been perceiving to be going on and potentially happening wouldn't happen next week, but I think it's probably like an April, May type of a situation. This $2 level we've been at, that could be tested that week if there's a definitive agreement or something that's signed that shows this new element of the vanadium business that actually is all modeled with vanadium being at $5 and looking ridiculously profitable. That's all I can say there. Let's wait to hear more. But we have, even without that, there's tremendous value in this company at these prices in the vanadium asset. And then what we've got being built in the background with the gold Nevada story. And you're going to get, if you're a shareholder of Phenom Resources, you're going to get a piece of both companies on the spin out. But if what I'm referring to vaguely and cryptically occurs, and I think there's an 80 to 85% chance it is going to occur, it is already occurring in steps. Nothing's guaranteed, and I can't say anymore. See this arrow right here? Going up to wherever. I'm not saying this, guys, to just hype you up to buy a few shares of Phenom. I don't give a shit if anybody buys any more or not. I'm going to be, if this stuff in the background goes forward, which it looks like from honest hard work and from some angles that I hadn't even thought about with our value with some of the technical people that we have on the board, the advisory board. Um, you know, 10 million shares in warrants, of which only about 3 million of those are warrants. The rest I bought in the open market. My cost average on Phenom is well into the 30s Canadian, probably somewhere around 36, 37, 38 cents. So I'm down 20, 25%. You can buy more of this cheaper than I own so much of the stock. And I cannot, infer enough. If you don't have a big, meaningful position in Phenom Resources, and you can buy this easily all day up to 35, 37 cents Canadian, high 20s in the US. And not just today when you hear about it, but put it on a list and chip away at this and build your position. We may very well get very wealthy together. At a worst case scenario, we've got underlying this thing, there is real value, certainly in the vanadium asset. We're going to see value created on the gold side because Dave Matheson is one of the biggest legends in Nevada gold discovery history. And he's been on a bit of a cold streak because of look at the Carlile. We drilled 17 holes. We haven't hit a feeder zone yet. We had gotten his smoke asset and he was very honest and said, we did a little program, abort, not looking good. That guy's got some competitive grit in him, I'll tell you, and he's got the ability. He's found multiple gold districts around the Carlin trend. And now, we've got the best of breed in the gold spot, and it's going to be a lot cheaper to drill. And this company's always going to be moving forward. And even if you're not hearing anything, it is not only not dead, but some of the biggest things that I've ever heard about in a junior miner of this size working on is bigger than anything I've ever even been involved in my life. I couldn't have dreamed it up in a million years. Sorry to be cryptic, but I am freaking stoked about what's coming on Phenom Resources. So let me get into on a separate video. I wanted to touch on LAC and some of these other ones that have been down. I'm very bullish on Giga. If you want nickel, nothing has changed there. The Turnigan asset is still there. Very bullish on Giga. Extremely bullish, extremely bullish on Phenom Resources. Carlile dumped. It's a hold. Max got cut in half on the lithium side, almost broke out, but didn't in the lithium correction and ended up collapsing in half. I think it's probably as low as it's going to go. That's a hold soon with some evidence that it's turning around. They just got this. They're working on some things there with the Wilcox situation and with any sort of an improvement confirmed in the lithium sector. I may recommend buying more right now. It's just a hold. Silver Storm for silver, buy to strong buy, definitely a hold if you own a little bit higher. But this one I've talked about openly around where the prices are at. And LAC, for those that stuck with the way to do it, it took longer than I thought. But you shouldn't be in any trouble at this point. You should have profits or, pretty much break even. And if you want to move on to some other stuff, God bless. I'm going to hold on a bit longer for a little bit more of a pop, but I am going to take that. That was a trade. That was not a long-term investment. Okay. That's it for today, guys. Thanks for listening. I know this was longer. I'm going to try to stress in the email body that hopefully people can listen to this to get updates on a lot of these different things. For those of you that are newer, there's going to be new picks. I will organically get much more active with regard to talking about this space, probably starting next week when we get the final confirmation that gold is busted out of an all-time high range and is going to fly in the near term and start to drag the mining stocks with it, because you have to act quickly in that scenario to deploy capital to really get the favor in your court for making the highest, some of you, life-changing type of returns. Pros, life-changing type of performance. But I'm aggressive when that stuff comes into play. So I'm just saying, and I'm going to give you guys also a couple of the videos that have come out, interviews. If I've sent them out already or you watch, just ignore them. But the ones that I did recently with Rob McEwen and Rick Rule are tremendous. And then I've also had my own interview that went out where I talk about gold and crypto and that whole thing. And people really seem to enjoy it. The audience has liked it and stayed online 3 times more and higher than a typical Real Vision video. So I'll start to trickle that stuff to you guys. And I'm going to pause it there, and I wish you a great day.